Welcome to ASCC's Concrete Talk. We want to thank ASCC for sponsoring the show. Go to ascconline.org and check out all the great benefits they have to offer. Follow us on all social media, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Today on the show, we have Steve Lloyd joining us. ASCC's Concrete Talk. Right. I'm Rick Lovdell, and you're
Matt Popoff.
And today we are here with the amazing legend, Mr. Steve Lloyd himself. How was that for a good start?
I like it.
Really good.
Right. You can tell it's our first time, right?
We can do that over again if you want.
I don't care either way. I like that we roll for a minute and talk in either way, so it doesn't matter.
Okay. Well, we can get started then.
All right. So the first thing I have on my list for the two of you, I want to see if I can stump the master, Mr. Steve Lloyd, and Mr. Matt Popoff. I want to see if I can stump both of you. Maybe I can't. We'll see what happens. Have you ever heard of Tabby Concrete?
Tabby?
Yeah.
Have I ever heard of what? Concrete?
Tabby Concrete. Tabby Concrete.
Is that gonna?
It's not a company. It's a type of concrete.
Is that the new 1T concrete coming out?
No, this is something I learned literally a couple days ago in Savannah, Georgia. Completely coincidental. My wife noticed this little moment. I read it and I was like, "You got to be kidding me!" So I wanted to see if I stumped the masters.
You stumped.
Have you ever heard of Tabby Concrete?
You stumped me, brother.
Okay.
We've definitely heard about 1T cement.
No. This is actually from the 1800s.
Oh, okay. Burning oyster cells to
create
create lime, then mixing it with water, sand, ash, and broken oyster shells.
That sounds
like
That sounds like that concrete I poured in Puerto Rico.
Accurate.
Probably
accurate. We poured concrete in Puerto Rico too. And you get oyster shells in them.
Yeah, you get crushed.
So that's called Tabby.
That's called Tabby?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we finished.
I found that out at the Sorrel Weed Mansion. We went there for a ghost tour. Oh. My wife is obsessed with ghosts and all that kind of stuff. She went on her own ghost tour, and she's like, "We got to go through this mansion." And I was like, "I don't care about ghosts, but whatever." And so I went along with her. So I'm sitting in the courtyard waiting for it to start. And she goes, "Hey, there's this thing about concrete over here." And I'm like, "What?" And I went over and I read it. And I was like, "Huh, that's an interesting timing." And I thought I would bring it up today to start the show.
That's awesome. So I've poured Tabby Concrete. I just didn't know it was called Tabby Concrete.
Right.
Yeah. You know, that's the funniest thing about a lot of the things that I do is people don't realize there's a name for some of the techniques. Same thing with all the math I use and everything too. A lot of people use the same math. They just don't know they actually have a name to it.
Right.
So here you go. There's another point to that
yeah.
Tabby is a form of concrete.
Tabby coastal concrete. That's what happens when you Google it. But yeah, we definitely got a lot of that. We did both the Costco's in Puerto Rico. We did the slabs for both the Costco's in Puerto Rico, and there was a lot of oyster shells just in the mix because it's like that's a normal thing down there.
Well, when I did my demo in San Diego for a concrete decor show, I noticed that the concrete was very tan colored, and it was because of the sand and the shells. It was the same thing; like it was a different colored concrete because of what they have there to add to the mix of the conglomerate of concrete. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was really interesting too. I'd never seen concrete that color anywhere else in the country.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So we did the job. When we did the job in Puerto Rico, we had an on-site plant. The most we got an hour was 40 yards an hour.
That sounds right.
Pouring a hanger bay for Lufthansa airline. 40 yards an hour.
Okay, so I got to play dumb for that point right there. On your typical job, what would be the amount of yards you would get an hour?
It depends on where you're at. Depends on, around here where I'm at with all on-site, these guys have dry batch plants. you're lucky to get 80 yards an hour. You're lucky.
80, so twice
Yeah,
as many,
you're lucky
twice
to
as
get
much.
that. If they tell you 80, you're probably going to get 60.
Accurate.
That's the way it
Huh.
Accurate.
works. But now you get into the big metropolitan places that got big plants and central mix plants. I mean, they can blow it out of there. You know, well, when we did that world record pour in in Texas, I think the most we got an hour was like 678 yards an hour.
And how
Wait,
many
whoa, whoa.
plants were?
What?
Yeah,
5 plants,
five plants.
678 yards an hour.
So you went from 600 and all of that to
Yeah.
40 in Puerto
So
Rico.
you got to be. I mean,
That's a
it
significant
depends on
difference.
what you do.
That's
So
hilarious.
with us, we do a lot of everything. We can do the big floors. We do a lot of small floors. We do a lot of elevated decks. We do so many things, Rick. We are really uh, the, where we are at. We do so many different things. I mean, it could be pavement one day. It could be a million square foot pour one day. It could be 10,000 feet on an elevated deck. It could be inside of a nuclear plant pouring, whatever. But I mean, we are back and forth all the time with so many different things. It's not like the big floors when we were on the road doing the big floors. To me, that was easy. I mean, you use a laser screed, you pour 1,000, 1,500 yards a day, you get on your riding trail machines and you ride it. I mean, that's pretty simple. But when you get into these schools and you get into these hospitals with edges and where you really got to have craftsmanship, to me, that's a whole different thing. That's a real craftsman. You know, I mean, you got to use your skills, and you don't find that much anymore.
That's an interesting point, especially with all the talks you and I
Yep,
have had about the FF
right.
levels and the FL levels and all that kind of stuff, and trying to pass those tests at the same time. That's a lot to take on at one time
And
on those kind of
and
projects.
especially if you've got a polished floor. I mean, those edges have to be perfect, just like the floor. That's a real important to the polisher. And we always know when we got a polished floor because we finish it a little different than we do a normal floor. We leave a little bit
Interesting.
for that polisher. We don't take it down to where we densify that surface so hard that he can't open it up. We've never had I mean, people like to polish behind us.
That's what we like to pride ourselves on too. It's kind of sets us apart from everybody else when it comes to doing slope to drain floors and bigger elevated decks with lots of drains and complications inside of a building. And then you take them for a 10,000 square foot paving pour the next day. That's a walk in the park.
Yeah,
I mean, that's easy peasy stuff. The guys like those kind of days because they're easy to do. But yeah, where we set ourselves apart is where the complicated slabs come in, where you got to do 20,000 square feet with multiple drains and that kind of stuff.
the guy that taught me to do concrete was a stickler on cat faces in a floor. You didn't leave cat faces. Your edges better be as good as the middle of your floor, and the quality. That's what we have sold on drains. Sometimes I'll go out on a drain after we poured it, and I'll pour a cup of water in that drain, and it better be a perfect circle. It better not be an oval. It better be a perfect circle. You know,
That's a great point.
Now, of course, I got another stupid question. What's a cat face?
cat face is if you are finishing a floor. A lot of times the it's got to be completely slick. It can't be a little divot in the floor, a little hole in the floor. It's got to be completely slick all over. And a lot of people leave a lot of cat. I mean, I've done some consulting here lately in my later years, and I go out on jobs, and it just I'll be honest with you. To me, I pride myself in being a really really good finisher, and quality is number one. And you don't see that a lot anymore. Uh, I don't see it a lot anymore. I get a lot of calls on a lot of people want me to look at floors, and it comes from it. I've even and here's a little thing that years ago I got called to go to Harrisonburg, Virginia, to finish a floor, and so I went up to the job and met with the owner and the GC, and he asked me how I was going to pour the floor, and I said I'm going to pour the floor with a laser screed and this. He said, "Stop! You're not pouring with the laser screed on my job." And I said, "Why is that?" He said, "Well, come out here and look at this floor." Well, that was back in the day when everybody rented laser screeds. Well, these 5 guys rented a laser screed and tried to pour 20,000 feet. And I said, "Sir, this is not the laser screed. This is the people you had finishing the floor." You know, so the equipment we got now is just so much better. You know, and but I can remember back in the day. I mean, I pulled a 2x4. That was my job. I pulled a straight edge. You know, we didn't even have lasers on jobs. You know,
Sure.
so it's come a long, long way to make things better. But in some terms, it seems like to me that it has made it so easy that people have forgot how to really catch the edge. You know, with the hands. So these edge machines, they got a they're really good pieces of equipment, but we still do edges by hand when we have to. So especially the polishing guys. I mean, these polishing guys got to have these edges and these drains and everything's got to be right for them. You know, it's got to be densified almost at the same as the middle of the floor. So we don't have,
Sure.
to get it flat. But the little cat faces is kind of what Steve is references is if you hit a floor, say with like a trowel of some sort, if you hit it with a trowel and then you miss one spot and that never gets hit with a trowel, and then by the time that you come through and actually finish the floor and densify it with your blades to get that shine surface, if that spot that you didn't hit before will have the old face of the concrete in it, so which we call cat faces.
I was going to ask that. I was like, where did that start from? Like, who came up with the idea of cat face? That's an interesting
Yeah, because they'll shine up, like the rest of the floor will look black, and then there'll be a gray spot or a real bright gray spot.
It won't be finished. It won't be finished.
Correct.
I think the one thing that we all agree on too, like you were saying for a minute there, Steve, is that we all care so much about what we do. I mean, we take our job extremely serious, and which is why we're part of this organization, why we're part of ASCC, why we're here today, why we do so much for the industry, is we're obsessed with trying to do things the best way we can. And that's an interesting point. It frustrates the crap out of me too when I go into somebody else's job and I'm like, this is what you think is quality. It's so hard to see other people's work.
And I think too, Rick, that you gotta go back and you look at the preface of ACI 302. It starts all with good design, and a lot of times these finishers are trying to finish something that's really unfinishable. I mean, like everybody must take the water out of concrete. You've got to have water in concrete. I mean, you talk about the tabby concrete. What about the great Coliseums? I mean, what was that called? That's still standing. That's rock, sand, cement, and water,
right,
brother. I mean, they didn't have all these chemicals. And the chemical guys really, I'm not saying they don't like me, but they don't think a lot of me because I'm not a big chemical guy. You know what I'm saying? Now, I think chemicals have that place. If you want to put it in a wall or footer or something like that, but leave my floors alone. Rock, sand, cement, and water. And all the tests that we've done all across the country, and I've done a lot of testing with a good friend of mine, Russell Nudak. And we've done so many test panels with all these internal cures, this Ashford formula, all different types of fibers, all different types of everything. The best abrasion tests and the best floors we found have been with rock, sand, cement, and water with a good water cure.
That's crazy. I mean, that doesn't surprise me whatsoever. But it's just crazy to have to wrap your head around where we're at today and why we keep trying to change things to make it better, and it just makes it harder.
They've got concrete on drugs, Rick. Don't know, the
Uh,
concrete don't know how to.
That is the quote of this
They
show.
really do. They got concrete on drugs. The concrete doesn't know to hydrate or not hydrate or what to do. And when you don't put enough water in concrete, that then you want to over chemical it. Um, then you get differential setting, and that's really hard to make a pretty floor. I mean, you know, like we were doing a job today. It was inside. It was a parking deck slab on grade, and the they told us that they were going to have all the drips stopped. Well, guess what? We poured inside today. It rained, and guess what we had? Nothing but drips. And we just told them, said, guys, you tell us this, you tell us that, but the floor, we could only do so much. And with the differential setting on a broom finish, if you inside a deck like that, you can't go back to it. Once you broom it, you can't go back. Now, on a trail finish floor, you can go back, but you're probably going to scratch that floor all to pieces trying to get back and finish that little piece. So we actually try to keep enough walk behinds to tie that in so we don't over finish it and scratch that floor up. But it's really, really hard. This 1L cement we're fighting right now, you don't know what you're getting from day to day. And now they're coming out with the 1T. And of course at ACI in New Orleans, I listened to them talk. PCA was talking, and they were saying, "Oh, well, just take the water out and add more chemical and this." And I asked the guy, I said, "Are you a finisher?" Evidently, you're not. Somebody's got to finish this stuff, and it really upsets me because the key to what I've done my whole life is quality. I want to do such a good job that owner is going to say, "I want that Steve Lloyd guy back here on my floor," and that's what we've done. But sometimes our hands are tied because we've got an unfinishable product. And PCA threw this stuff out here to be green, and they didn't do a whole lot of R&D on it. And it's a lot of problems all over the whole country with this stuff now. So the finishers are getting blamed for a lot of this stuff when they shouldn't be. You know.
because we're left to deal with it.
Yeah.
That's what I love Steve. Steve's always been the voice of the finisher. Period. Ever since day one. I met him probably. I think I met him back in early 2012, 11, something like that. And Rick got me, or not Rick. Steve got me involved with ACI in 2016, and it's because we needed more voices of the finisher, and it really makes a difference. A lot of people don't think, like, oh, I'm just a podunk concrete contractor from Washington or Virginia or whatever. But our voices really do matter because we're the ones that are left to deal with this stuff. We're the ones that are left to deal with the problems. We're the ones that are left to deal to answer with the customer. So, and when the lawsuits come down, it comes down to us, not the architect, the engineer, or somebody that designed it, and experience like Steve has is critical when it comes to dealing with the things that we've been thrown at, things that we've been thrown like 1L cements and all these super plasticizers and polycarboxylates and all this stuff. And it's been very nice to hear Steve stand up against any one of these guys in these committees, and really give the finisher's voice, which is empowered me to be able to say, like, oh, well, my voice actually matters too.
No, I agree with you. And on top of that, too, like even with the whole polishing thing, before we talk about this many times, Steve, but before the Concrete Polishing Council joined us, you were adamant about we need these guys together. We need to talk it all out because they don't understand what we're trying to say, what we're doing. They're making these obscure ideas that we can't make this happen this way. If they only had us in the same room so we could talk to each other, and then boom, it happened. And like Matt said, you were 100% the first voice to go, look, this is how it goes. This is what we need to do. This is how we need to change our mentality. And I believe it has started to change the way that whole industry works now because we have joined together and we're able to talk all this stuff out like we're doing right now.
And it is good. Now that back in the day, the polishers were wanting a FF50, FL35. So the L number you don't need I mean, you just want they just want
Right.
flat. So if it's three eighths
Right.
of an inch difference in 50 foot, the L number is going to fail. But if it's flat, and I think we did a floor like that at ASCC. I think we were up. I'm not sure where we're at, but we did a demonstration, and remember we poured that slab. I had
So
Steve Ray and Duck. We spit tobacco in it. We threw cigarette butts in it. We put sunflower seeds in it, and we actually poured it on a slope. So the guys that were polishing it, I said, "How does that work?" It was on a slope because the parking lot was on a slope. The L number was like a 10. He said, "Man, this is perfect," but it was flat, so it didn't matter if it had a little bit of slopes. The polishing guys were killing themselves by overspecking them, trying to overspec something that we couldn't give them in a blocked grade. When was the last time you poured when block was within a quarter inch? Never. Or the edge angle on an elevated deck. It's never. I mean, we have to make that work, and we've done it over the years, but we
Right.
can't. Don't hold us to things that we can't do. But the polishing guys, I mean, I've got a polisher. I've done some polishing. I know what they want. I know what they need. Uh, but to be real about it, you don't have to. Those specs don't have to be. They just got to have a good flat surface and good edges. You know.
Well, and to your point too, I remember that project you guys did for the
Yep.
demonstration, and there was even like you left a trowel machine on it, so you saw the blades sit there for a little while and bleed into whatever. And when it was all said and done and was polished, it
Yeah.
actually looked pretty good. And honestly, even the worst case scenarios, throw everything at it that you could possibly think of that would make it look ugly, still looked pretty good when it was all said
And
and done.
y'all. The thing of it is finishing is to me, it's all I know. I love what I do, and the reason I love what I do is because I can't figure it out. Every day is a different day, but the quality. I mean, that's what I preach on is quality, man. You got to give these guys, And now with the way things are, a lot of people, I've been told before on a job, you don't come in here and sell quality. We're just gonna cover this up with carpet. Well, I didn't do that job because I don't care if it gets covered up with carpet. We're still going to do the same. I've had I've had general contractors say, "Well, don't worry about this, don't worry about that. It gets covered up." We're not doing that. When we walk away from that job, it's going to be finished like any other job, you know. So, but a lot of people now don't really seem to care. They just want concrete poured and they'll cover it up. I can
I agree.
And they want
I
it done
and they want
cheap.
it done really cheap. And I can give so many examples of. I got called back to a job. Uh, it was at a university, and they called me back and said, "Steve, can you come look at this slab?" And I went over and looked at it, and I said, "Well, for I could have done the same thing for that price, but you said I was too high. But now you got to deal with it. You're going to have to grind this whole floor, you know." Uh, but you're right. But in that term, but in still, it's some people that still care about quality. You get into these Frito jobs or Anheuser-Busch or things, they still want good quality. Amazon, I mean, you get on an SSI job, they are all about quality, and I like that. You know what I'm saying? I love the F number system. I think it can be. A lot of people don't understand it. I think a lot of engineers don't understand it. What they really need, and for the F number system, and then they might go crazy if it comes in 1 or 2 points under when it doesn't really matter. I mean, when you get to up to a 50, it's a grain of sand can make 10 or 15 points different when you get above that. It's just nothing. I mean, when you get that flat. So,
Yeah.
but then again, like I was telling you, these guys were wanting to polish floors and they wanted FF50, FL35, which is a very flat floor in a school. You just can't, you don't have the room to work. You can't run patterns. You got rebar sticking up. You got block to grade. I mean, so these polishing guys, but they've come around. I mean, we came out with an article. We wrote an article several years ago about just the F number. That's what you really need, and they've stuck to that. I'm on the polishing committee in ACI, and I really enjoy that because I wish a lot of times that all polishers were finishers. You know, I think it would do them good to be out there to see exactly what we have to the battles we fight, and with the concrete match. I mean, this concrete nowadays, man, I'm telling you. But as soon as we learn about 15% limestone, as soon as we get that dialed in, it's going to go to 25. They've already told us that. So it's not going to get better. We just got to figure it out.
Yeah, and
That's the tough one.
that's where obviously our collaboration comes in and is the biggest thing, because we got to lean on each other to try to figure this out, right? I mean, it ain't, like you said, it ain't gonna get any better, that's for sure. And I think it's become, I don't know if you'd agree, Steve, but it's become more of our finishers are good. We can finish anything as long as they're set up correctly, which, I mean, like you and I, we spend a lot of time before looking into the specifications, making sure the mix is correct, making sure we're getting all the water into the mix. That kind of stuff is so important to set our guys up to not fail. It's
Exactly, Matt. That's why the
yeah,
people meetings, and I'm telling you, a lot of these engineers are listening. When you can tell them, hey, you want me to pour a 0.42 water cement ratio, that's not in the guidelines of ACI 302. And I said, a lot of these engineers try to go to 318. They try to take structural and put it
right,
into a floor slab. That's why they have ACI 302 and ACI 360. That's for slabs. I mean, structural is structural, but don't put structural into my slab. You know,
hmm,
so but I'm telling you, a lot of these guys really are listening. I guarantee you that I'll get at least one phone call a week from an engineer somewhere talking about a slab. What do you think? I said, look, go to your guidelines. We got guidelines for a reason. You know, and you can pour the slab if you want to, but I can't guarantee it. You're not within the guidelines of ACI. You know, you
I agree.
you got to have water. And another thing is, guys, no offense to the producer, but all they care about is 4,000. So I was looking at a job not long ago, and the 28-day breaks was 65.50, and I said, so you want you've got all this cementitious material in this floor, which is going to shrink, it's going to curl, it's going to crack, it's going to do. Why do you need 65.50 when we only want 4,000? Why? Well, that's really good. So that tells you how much he doesn't know. So
Right.
so me as an uneducated, not a college guy with a degree, have to talk to these guys with degrees. Uh, and I do run across some every now and again that they use that college degree. Um, and I said, fine, get you somebody else to pour it. Because you're not. I can't guarantee you what I'm going to give you. But it has gotten better. I mean, on my part, it has. When I go to do a job, it's a pre-pour meeting, and we look. I really study that mix design. I look at subgrades. Substrates are very, very important, and people don't look at everything that we look at. But it's working pretty good for us. Right now.
It's good. So, Steve, how long have you been in business, and when did you start doing concrete?
Well, I got out of the military in 1973.
You were a Marine,
No, I
correct?
was a Navy diver.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Yeah, yeah. And I went to work for a guy. Well, actually, I went to work at a foundry, and that lasted about 3 months. So I went to work in the concrete business in 1973 for the guy that taught me concrete, and he was a basement guy. I mean, he didn't buy the bull float he had was uh, uh, some uh, some of that round railing you put in for to hang your clothes on, and he got some redwood, and he made his own bull float. So it won't no knuckle hounds. You push it out and you raise it up real high to get it back. But this guy was as old school as you can get, but he was one of the best finishers. I mean, you didn't like I said. I can remember doing basements and we had loaded the machines on the truck, and he told me to go hit the edges one more time. I'd be so mad. I mean, the floor was burnt in, but he'd make me get on my hands and knees and crawl those edges again. But he taught me the right way. I mean, he taught me about quality and what it was all about. And when I guess I really wanted more. I wanted to do more. You know, we did pools back in the day. When we did pools, we would wheelbarrow the concrete down into the pool, and we would take shovels and shovel it up against the wall. It was rebar going up the side of the walls. I mean, worked hard, man.
Your own version of shotcrete.
I started out at $10 a day. That's what I started making, and I got up to 25. But we would pour, 2,500 square feet, three of us. We would roll it, and we'd wheel it in, and we'd strike it off, and we'd do everything. And then, I wanted more, so I started out, and then we started pouring. I bought an old pump, old Thompson pump, and we started pumping some concrete, and we started pouring 5,000 at a time. And nobody, that was unheard of. I bought an old riding trowel machine, and we started out doing that, and then we went to 10,000 feet, and then we started doing 20. That was unheard of. And I mean, I was doing a job at a hospital, and it was 3 stories, and it was 20,000 foot of floor. And the guy called me up. I was on the job in Charlottesville, Virginia at UVA, and he called me up and said, "We're going to get this pour. I got it all set up. We're going to do this many days, and we're going to do 4 pours per floor. So it's going to be 12 days, and we're going to have it done." And I said, "Well, I'm going to tell you what we're going to do. We're going to bring this pump up there, and we're going to do 3 pours, and we will be done." He said, "You can't do that." I said, "Well, you can get some wood up there for bulkheads if you want to, but you're going to walk." And we around here, a small town, but I mean, we set the standard. I mean, we started it, and I mean, we went to 20,000 foot pours and pump, place, and finish. I got more pumps, and of course, the newest and latest equipment I would buy. Then Somro came around with the screeds, and I mean, I remember going up to Dave Somro's place in August to look at a screed. They didn't even have a plow on the front of that screed when they're trying to sell that screed, and I ended up buying me a screed, and I mean, I've tried them all. I mean, Somro, Allen, Multiquip, all these guys have soft cut, have come along to make these floors really superb, and you can't say enough about them. But we've been on with all of them, and we do a lot of testing for them. We do a lot of research and development with these guys, and I can't say enough about these guys making it easier.
So talk about your world record pour. Explain that one.
Oh, that was a good one. So, I think that was in right before the World of Concrete. It was a week before the World of Concrete. But I remember, I remember it was in Arlington, Texas. It was with Barton Mallow, and there was another company involved. It was 3 companies involved. We had 120 finishers on the job. We poured 280,000 square feet, 7,000 cubic yards, and 1 placement. It took 31 hours from the time we started. But I'll tell you a story about that. So we met about 6 times on that. I think General Motors had ordered a bunch of equipment, and they ordered it too early. So a buddy of mine, Tommy Binkowski, called me, and he said, "Steve, do you think we can pour?" I said, "Heck yeah, we can pour it. I mean, why not? We can get the people and equipment." And all the we had more equipment. The manufacturers just flooded us with these new trial machines, and some are about 2 tractor trailer loads of stuff. All of these, we had more equipment there than they had at the World of Concrete,
Right.
But that job started out. We met about 6 times, and it was a guy from Barton Mallow that drew this time lapse we're going to dump a truck every minute. And he had a beautiful time lapse of this floor being poured. And they went around the table and they asked everybody what you thought. And I asked who did it, and the guy raised his hand. I said, they ought to give you a raise for that. But I can tell you one thing. When that first truck gets there, you can throw that out the window because it isn't going to happen like that. And sure enough, the trucks were supposed to come in at a 6-inch lump. Then they got that at a 4. And we mixed and mixed and mixed. It took 5 minutes. I said, so there goes your minute and a half. It's gone. And at one point, the ready mix companies weren't, it was concrete ready mix out of Fort Worth. They weren't bringing us as much concrete as they were supposed to do. And Tommy Benkowski came to me and said, one of the guys on the job said they wanted to cut the pour off, that we weren't getting enough concrete and it wasn't going like it was supposed to go. And I said, I didn't come down here to fail. We're not stopping this pour. He said, that's all I wanted to hear. So I went to the ready mix guy and I said, look, we've been planning this 6 months. You're not doing what you said. I said, that spare plant you got, you need to fire it up and start bringing me more trucks. And I walked away and he shook his head and he came back and says, where are you from? I said, this is the way we do it in Virginia. You just need to bring us the concrete. And they did. They started bringing us about 650 yards an hour. I mean, we were rolling, and we had to load fibers. It had fibers in it. I think we ended up setting a world record, and even with the FF and FL numbers we got on that floor, and right. We had a lot of differential setting in that. What we had to do is we were running back and forth and on that thing, and finally one of the guys there said, Steve, you stay back there with the finishing. I'm going to stay up here getting the placement done. And I stayed back there. So what we had to do, we had a lot of walk behinds on that floor because of the differential setting. And so when you try to take those machines and go wet to dry, you smear that floor. It looks like crap. So we left about I told the finish, I said, y'all leave about a foot strip and keep moving. And we took walk behinds and tied that in, a lighter machine, which tied it in real pretty. You know what I'm saying? And I think it was from the time we started till the time the last wet cure blanket went down, it was 31 and a half hours.
That's incredible.
And we had shifts. I mean, they treated us like kings. I mean, we had buses, we had shifts, we had teams, 12-hour shifts. And I told them, I said, I'm not leaving till it's done. So Tommy Benkowski came to me and said, Steve, man, we got to go. We got to go. So he said, let's go back to the hotel and we'll get us a cold beer and a hamburger or something. And I said, I'll go when I see that last blanket being rolled out. Last blanket got rolled out. We went back to the motel. We went to the bar, ordered a big old cheeseburger and french fries and a cold beer. I take one bite of the hamburger, one sip of the beer, and fell asleep at the bar. The adrenaline was gone. You know what I'm saying? But my two boys stayed on the job the whole time. They never left. Duck was scalded. He was down there placing. He was scalded. I mean, his legs. He was Stevie Ray. I mean, all these guys, and we worked with we had to actually join the union for that job. So that was General Motors. You have to be union. So I still got my union badge on the board. But we work with union guys, and we were non-union. And you know what? It didn't really matter. I mean, those guys, it was just so much fun. Everybody knew what they had to do. We had guys that were good on pans. We had guys that were good on combos. We had guys the edge guys, you didn't have to ask them to come catch it. They had their sliders. They were out there. I mean, everybody, I can't explain it. It was probably one of the most exciting things I've ever done in my whole life. I mean, I'll never forget that. The only thing left for me right now is I'd like to be the first man to pour concrete on the moon.
Oh, there you go. Well,
I would. And the guy said, well, you're getting kind of old. I said, well, I'll sit in Houston and tell my boys what to do. You know what I'm saying?
There you go.
No, I'm telling you, that was a great job, Matt. I mean, it was just I mean, they had areas for people to come in and watch us. My wife called and said, "I just saw you on video. They're videoing this whole thing, and this and the people from our hometown. Of course, Bedford is 1,500 people. I mean, the whole town was watching that thing. They were cheering us on. You know what I'm saying on the internet. So it was a great thing. It was a great team. Everybody did a great job. From uh, uh, Jim with Beckett Fibers to uh, Somro to Montequip to Wacker to Allen Engineering, and I don't want to leave out anybody because everybody did a heck of a job. I mean, just it was unbelievable. Yeah.
Well, and that's kind of that's kind of the point of this podcast is the fact that like we talk about collaboration, right? I mean, how did you harvest all these relationships that put that the collaboration and how that pour was put together is just a phenomenal act in itself. But the fact that all those suppliers, vendors, finishers, and everybody, Barton Malo is like everybody put it all in on that, and I feel like that was a tremendous effort of everybody that's a big part of this association.
Well, and you're right, and we talk about it a lot. I talk to Tommy a lot, and we're looking at we're hoping we can do another one, maybe a 500,000 to 750,000 square feet at one time. I mean,
Let's do it.
people think
I'll help.
people think we're crazy, but I mean that's what gets me. That's what keeps me going. I mean, I just turned 72 a couple of weeks ago, and I still got my passion for concrete is just I can't tell you guys what it is, and it's not just it's I want to be good for the industry for the little guy, and I want to be good for the polishers and anybody that's got anything to do with concrete because it, it's a way to do it, and it doesn't have to be complicated. I mean, I'm a concrete finisher. If I can figure it out, anybody can figure it out, man. I mean, come on. You don't,
I've,
you know,
I've always loved that. I've always loved your slogans, Steve. I've always used them too. I steal a lot of them.
I mean,
One, uh, two is one, and one is none.
yeah,
I mean, that's your equipment, everything.
yeah. I mean, it's really, we just, I mean, how people overthink a lot of things. I mean, everybody wants to overthink. Concrete's been around for, I don't know how many. Rick, that's another one, stump to stump. How long's it been around? I mean, for years. And
Yeah.
and,
Yeah,
and if you go
1800s,
back, and I know that a lot of times I go back to these when they demoing these old bridges and stuff, and if you look at what they used, I mean, big old rocks, and that's why I like the big rock mixes. You know what I'm saying? The bigger the rock, the less paste, so the less cement you have to coat that rock. So we can keep the cement way low. We get less shrinkage and less cracking and curling and everything else. You know what I'm saying? It starts the substrate and the mix design of the two key things that I always look at. I always want to see a mix design. I want to see a mix design if I'm going to a job. Show me this mix design. And then we look at that mix design and of course I'm going to pick it apart. But when
Have you ever seen the core of the sample of the Hoover Dam, Steve?
yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
It's maximum 9-inch aggregate.
I mean, I think that I told my wife, Kathy, I said, you know what? I think in my first life, I was a puddler on the Hoover Dam. The puddle guys? I think in my first life, that's what I did. But I do love concrete. I mean, I love it. I love everything about it. And the reason I love it because I can't figure it out.
That's it. That's a great slogan right there. You can't get any better.
No.
Well, it cracks me up all the time too with what I do because I'm always trying to get people to understand math is not that complicated.
It's not.
It's really not. It's the biggest problem is they just don't know where to start. The biggest hurdle I always have is they just don't understand where to start. Once they get the start, they can figure out the rest of the math or the rest of the basics of what I explained. But the biggest frustration my students have is I just don't understand where to begin.
You're right, Rick.
We got to start.
And we got so many great organizations. ASCC. I mean, you got ASCC. You got really really good contractors. I mean, and we in that organization, we don't hide anything from anybody. We don't, like
No, we don't.
like we want to help each other. And then you go back to ACI. Look at ACI. I can remember when I first went to ACI, I was so intimidated because it was all engineers and architects, and I really didn't understand what they were saying, to be honest with you. And I came home and told Kathy, I said, I'm not going back there anymore. I can't. I'm just out of place there. I'm a fish out of water. And I came home a couple months and I was fussing about the concrete and this and that and other. She said, "Well, you need to quit fussing. You need to go back to ACI and need to make a difference." She said, "Don't be ashamed of who you are. Just go back and let them know." And I remember certification, finish the certification. The first time I went in that certification, I went to the very first one that when they were starting to get it going. And then I didn't go back for a couple of years and I went back. But the finish the certification, the test that they gave, nobody could pass. So my thing was, I went in there. I was the only finisher in there. I went in there, and this guy said, "Well, why are you so dead set against this test?" And I said, "Well, you probably finished high school, didn't you?" He said, "Well, I went to college." I said, "Well, these finishers are different. These finishers should be critiqued on what they do with their hands and their tools." And it took 15 years, and we got that. We got that now. Where we can just go to a job and watch this guy and give him his certification for what he actually does. Now I think that one or two guys should know the ins and outs about everything, and that's where the advanced finisher comes in. But it took us 15 years, and we finally got that through ACI, and so we can get more people certified. Now, the problem I see with certification, and I tell them in ACI, nobody enforces it. So if you go to 301, in 301 it says you should have a certified finisher on every job. Nobody enforces that rule unless you're an SSI job. They don't ask for your certifications. Now, here of the last couple of years, more people ask for certifications, but they don't ever check them. Nobody checks them. And then they have problems. No, well, did you have the right people on job? Well, no, they had the cheapest.
And the one another problem is that this I've been trying to emphasize with them is that it's only in one language, and
Yeah,
I don't know if you've seen our workforce or majority of the finishers workforce, but most of them don't speak English fluently.
yeah.
So there's a big hurdle there that we're going to have to tackle over the next 10, 15 years.
We've been trying to, but it's so many different types of Spanish too. There's so
Mm-hmm.
many, depending on where you come from, of what Spanish you're talking. So
I agree.
We have the same problem with English too. We just don't talk about it the same.
Right.
yeah, you're right. Well,
Yeah.
in me, I'm just kind of. I didn't major in English. I can tell you that. I mean, I didn't. The only reason I went to school was for sports. And see the girls. But you know,
Uh,
That's all right because I majored in color theory and I'm colorblind.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
whatever.
But
you're
no, guys. I
pretty
mean, it's really good. I mean, the concrete industry has been really, really good to me. I've had some. I've set 3 or 4 world records and all kinds of things, and it's been it's really been good to me. I love it. I don't think people say, "Well, when are you going to get out?" I don't think I can get out. I really don't.
It'll never happen.
I don't think it's going to happen. The boys,
No, but if you do a mega pour that's twice the size of the last one you did, you're going to have to take a break. You're going to have to go take a nap and come back to
No.
it and trust that it's still going to keep going. You can't go over if you went 31 hours, you can't go 62. That's
No,
not gonna
Rick,
happen.
we just need 1,800 yards an hour, so it goes twice as fast.
yeah,
Right, Steve?
yeah. I mean, yeah. I don't know. That adrenaline gets going. And I tell people, man, I don't need drugs. Just get me on a big pour. You know,
It is. It's adrenaline rush. That's
it's
for
it's the
sure.
adrenaline rush. It's just it's just that was really. And then we set a record in Jacksonville, Florida. I think it was Beers Construction. We were pouring a mat for a federal courthouse, and that was during the time of the explosions at Oklahoma City. So this thing was just matted up with rebar. I mean, just tons of. But we set a. I think we poured 10,000 yards in 16 hours on a mat pour. Um, I think we had 50 some people. That was really a fun thing too in downtown Jacksonville. We started on a Friday afternoon, and they blocked all the streets. And I think Rinker Concrete bought the concrete. We had 4 pumps on each corner. We had 1 pump on each corner. Had 4 pumps and a backup. And the guys down in the hole, the guys running the hoses had blinking lights on the helmet, so the pump operator would always know. Well, it was just a planned out thing. It was really cool, you know. I think we
Those are
did.
fun.
I think we did that one, and then the next weekend we went down to Tampa, Florida, and poured 11,000 yards. It took a little longer, but we poured more yardage. So I mean, it's been a great ride. You know,
It's safe to say you've seen a couple of yards of concrete.
I've seen it, and in Jacksonville, Florida, is where I chopped that finger off in a concrete sheet. That was, you know,
Yep.
but I chopped it off. But I was back at work that afternoon. I told them to sew it up and let's go. You know what I'm saying?
I gotta get back to that pour.
Yeah,
That's that dedication of the concrete finisher that is an unknown thing, and I feel like you know it, Steve. I know it, and it's whatever it takes, and that's what sets apart somebody that says they're a finisher to being a dang good finisher, you know. And it's the hardcore, whatever it takes. That's what it's all
I
about.
mean,
And I know your key guys are like that, and my key guys are.
I mean, you get one chance. We don't get to stop if it rains. We don't get to stop if the wind blows. We don't get to stop for lunch. I mean, you get one chance to do it. Yeah, that's all. You don't pull a nail out and move it down the line or repaint it or whatever. You get one chance to do your job. And I mean, it isn't. You don't get a lunch break. You don't get anything. You got to go. You know.
It's funny you say that because Matt and I were talking about this on our first episode where we were talking about the biggest jobs we've ever done. And I was like, oh, yeah, I've done 35,000 square feet. And he's like, yeah, did you do it in like a couple of days? I said, no, it took me 6 months. Because I'm not pouring the concrete. I'm working on the surface. I'm working in different
Yeah.
condos. I'm doing, like it's not the same mentality for me whatsoever. It's a whole different
Yeah.
universe for me where I'm like, no, it's one room at a time or a couple rooms
Yeah.
at a time. It's funny how different our worlds are for the same industry and for the same product. And I remind everybody all the time, and that's where you and I started talking was that, you're finishing my canvas, and it's very important for me to get to know you guys and very, very much to talk to you guys and understand that you don't realize people like me are coming in behind you. You have no idea what's happening to that concrete, like you were saying earlier, whether they're putting carpet on it or
Right.
anything else. You don't realize someone like me is coming behind you and making this elaborate design. And it's extremely important for me to let you guys know that kind of stuff and get to know you more because of it. It's awesome. I think it's an amazing world, amazing industry because
And
of it.
Rick, one of the things that I really like at pre-poll meetings is for the polishing guy to be there. But a lot of them, they won't come. You know,
Yeah, because I don't get it.
and that's why I
don't
wish
look at it that
polishing
way.
guys knew a little bit about finishing. If they could go with us for about a month, you know what I'm saying? And they probably wouldn't last a month, but I mean, if they just knew what we really are trying. I mean, I see some of the stuff these guys have to polish, and it's just and then they get to blame for it. And it's like you said,
Mhm.
it's the canvas, that they got to deal with, you know,
Right.
So, one of the things I did on a polishing job is they did 10 by 10 or 8 by 8 samples. And I just told them it was for a hospital. And I said, that sample is not going to look like this floor. I don't care what you say. So what I did is and I was just a finisher on the job, but I got all the hospital people and all the key people in a van and took them to some jobs that we had finished. And of course, sometimes you might see some deep aggregate, you might see some salt and pepper, you might see some cream. I took them and showed them these jobs, so their expectations. You know what? They really thought that was cool, but they had no idea that it would be there. But after the job was said and done, everybody was happy and everybody got paid. You know.
Yes, customer expectation is the number one
Yeah.
goal for everything we do. People do not take that serious. It's one of the things I teach all the time too. You've got to make sure, and I get so many technical calls about situations where I'm like, well, what does the customer think? And they're like, well, I haven't talked to them. Customer expectation is number one goal. They have to understand what you're doing and how you're doing it. I would rather have my client stand there and hold my pump sprayer than go on vacation while I do the work. I don't care if they stare
Yeah.
at me all the time. And I do the same thing in my house. If you come to my house and work on something, I'm going to be standing there watching every little detail because I'm obsessed with it. Not because I'm expecting you to fail, but because I care so much about every detail. I want to understand. I want to learn. I want to know it's my house. I'm paying for it. I want to know what I'm paying for. And I expect you to do the same thing. If it's your house, I assume you're going to want to know everything I'm doing for you. And I think that that's part of the experience for what I bring to the table for my jobs and things like that. It's part of my sales pitch to me. I want you to be involved. This is a team effort. It's not about you're paying me and then you're running away and I'm doing it without you. I had one project where I had a lady that worked 2 blocks away on a condo I was doing. She worked at the AT&T building 2 blocks away. Wouldn't answer the phone, wouldn't answer a text, wouldn't answer an email, didn't even stop in for lunch, and then came home and was like, I don't like it. And I walked away from the job. I was like,
Yeah.
screw you. I'm not doing this anymore. This is not how I work. I need you involved. I need to understand your expectations. And if I don't understand it, we can't
Well,
work
do you
together.
remember when the soft cut saws first came out? They were a little box about this, and I remember doing it. I remember I bought
Oh, the electric
the
ones.
electric ones. I've still got mine,
I got a couple too.
and I remember I was doing a job at University of Virginia, and I broke this saw out. I actually had the engineer pushing the saw. I mean, it's you get everybody involved. When we used to stay on the road all the time, we did a lot of work for Frito and PepsiCo and people like that. Those guys would come out. I'd put them on a trial machine, you know,
Yeah.
come out, but I'd make sure it was where they couldn't mess it. But I would get them involved, and when we did F minimum floors, I got the owner involved in the last pour. He was there from the time we did the F min floor to the testing part of it. He says, now I understand why it's so expensive because of the labor that goes into these F min floors. Uh, I said, his name was Steve also. And I said, Steve, we got one pour left. You want to come out here in the morning with us? He said, no, I've done enough, but I mean, getting these guys involved. The guy in Rosenberg, Texas at Frito-Lay was a plant manager. I had him on a trial machine and they took pictures. And when you walk in Frito-Lay, it's a picture of him on that trial machine, and his new addition of his building. But one of the things I always tell them when after I put them on the machine, and I let them ride around just a little bit, and I bring them back. I said, "Now, if the F numbers failed, it's your part. You did that, So, but I mean, getting them involved, Rick, that's the key. They want to be involved.
Hmm.
Right. I agree with that. I think that it's part of the, like you think about how much that you've had to advertise your company over the years and how much it's been word of mouth. It is that part of that experience. They want to tell your story. They want to go back and tell people you wouldn't
Yeah,
believe what this
yeah,
guy did
yeah,
for us. I joke about all the time when people are like, "Well, can you take so much off because your competition priced it this way?" No. You know what? Ask
yeah.
me afterward because you will understand why I price it the way I do. And by the end of it, they
No,
never ask again. If they agree to that kind of stuff, it's like no problem because they realize how serious I take what I do and how much detail it takes to do it because I get them involved and I see and they get to see what all the details are.
exactly.
You can ask 5 different customers what is polished concrete, and you're going to get 5 different answers.
Well, they don't know what kind of polishing they want.
No,
Man,
exactly.
they don't know.
So
I'll ask all the time. What do you do? What kind of polishing are you getting? Are you getting cream finish? Are you getting salt and pepper? Are you getting deep ag? What are you getting? They don't.
they don't
They
know.
don't have a clue. I had a guy the other day didn't know, the engineer that I was talking to told me he was not pouring what an L cement. He'd never heard of it. He won't pour it. And I said, you got to pour it because that's all we got.
That's
But he,
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I know people keep thinking they're pouring without it and they don't realize there is no alternative. You don't even know it's
exactly.
coming. I've already had that
Yeah.
conversation a couple
Even the
times.
cement certificates still show that it's not
Well,
integrated limestone. You got to find it on there.
but you're right, Matt. But the mills, you don't know if you're getting 8% limestone or 12% or 15%. They don't know what they're getting. And that is really hard when you get over that 10%, what we found, when you get into the 12 and 15, that is a whole different, that is really a dog to try to finish. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I was talking to a company recently. I was telling Matt about this last time that I've been educating on how to pour concrete better because of the 1L
Yeah,
stuff. And here we are, me, the artist that's never poured concrete, is helping a concrete company on how to pour better. It I can't wrap my head around that theory right there. But they were pouring 3,000 psi concrete, and I said you got to pour over 4,000. Number one thing I've learned from this experience is you got to pour over 4,000. And they're like, well, we never pour over 4,000. We have to go back to all of our contractors and tell them we've got to charge more to switch it to 4,000. And I'm like, I don't even know what to tell you. I don't even like, you have to understand, first of all, I've never heard that people pour 3,000 regularly. And second of all, I've always thought it was 4,000 or 4,500. I've never
yeah,
understood that. So you're way off right away. Like before we even start, you're already pouring us off concrete before we even begin this conversation. You're already off, even if you knew what you were doing before. And they just looked at me like I was crazy. I'm just laughing the whole time, going, "You're listening to an artist. Think about
Right.
that. You do your own research. You're listening to an artist.
well,
If I can find this information,
but you're
so
right.
can you."
You need a 4,000, and you need natural sand. I mean,
What?
that I tell them. I mean, I in the pre pours, I say this is what you got to. If this is what you want, this is what you need. You need the natural sand. You know, they want to.
Right.
You want to use the split sands, or they want to use manufacture. I said no. You need natural sand for polishing. You know, I need cement. I don't need fly ash. I don't need slag. So what kind of deals are you running into, Rick, with the 1L? I mean, with your type of work, do you see a problem?
Oh, I'm not. I don't see it at all. Like that's a whole
Okay.
different conversation. We'll talk about that
Yeah.
off air. But I'm not seeing it as much as I was I was at one of a distributors like a power rental distributor in town, and I was just having a casual conversation while I was waiting in line, and that's how it all started. And this guy was like, "What? I don't understand what you're talking about. I've never heard of that before." And I'm like, "Yeah." And he was showing me pictures of all the problems he's had. And the next thing he realizes over the last 6 months, that's why all these problems are happening. It's not
Yeah.
just this one job. And I went to one, it was a stamp job. And he was like, the sealer is not working. The sealer is failing. I'm like, it's not the sealer. It's the concrete. And he goes, what do you mean? And I was like, dude, you poured this 3 months ago. A tire cannot ruin the surface of concrete, sealed or unsealed. That's not how this works. And I walked over to the corner of a border of his stamp job where it had nothing to do with tires, and I could scrape it off
Yeah.
with my finger. Like, I don't know what else I need to explain to you other than it's the concrete. It has nothing to do with the coating, the stain,
Yeah.
nothing else. And they were just looking at me like, well, what do I do now? Well, you go back to your concrete manufacturer and you bring this up. I was like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I don't pour. So what do you want me to tell you
Yeah.
now?
Hire Lloyd Concrete.
Oh,
Yeah, really. But they're possibly going to become members of ASCC. I sent them information from because I called
yeah.
Ben Weiss. He gave me his newest article that he wrote or that he was involved with that was all about it, and I sent that to them and I had to sit down with them and everything like that. And the good thing was that they wrote that article in both English and Spanish, so I was able to send them both copies because they have Spanish speaking people working with them. And it was easier for us to communicate about it all. And it's been a really awesome experience for me because we joke about this over the years of knowing me that why am I a part of ASCC? Why am I part of any of this? I'm just this crazy artist in the corner that's doing stuff that's different. I'm not pouring concrete. So why am I a member of all this? Well, here you are. Here's the exact reason. Because I found someone that needed to know more, and I knew more than they did for the first time ever, and I was able
Yeah.
to help them out. And I'm changing the whole way that they think about concrete now, and they're probably going to become members of because of it. And I told them that. I said, if you become a member of this organization, you're going to have access to the people that know what's going on. I'm just a stepping stone. I'm just the one person that listens at all these meetings. I don't do this stuff. I just listen. And I absorb everything that you guys talk about all the time. And I ask you silly questions all the time because of it. And I enjoy the crap out of all. It doesn't make any sense to me why I'm so involved with ASCC sometimes because of my background. But I love every minute of it. It's a great organization. It's a great opportunity. I wouldn't know you guys I wouldn't know any of this stuff if it wasn't for that.
Well,
So, it's just crazy
it's
to
a
talk
team,
about for
and
me.
it takes everybody. like you have to work off what I do. So I've got to give you
Mm-hmm.
the best I can give you,
One hundred
and
percent.
um, it's just that the ASCC is just you got so many good people in that organization that
Well, that was one thing I was going to ask you. I don't know if it was on Matt's list of questions, but how long have you been a member of ASCC?
I can't really. You stumped the master again, but I can remember my first ASCC meeting I went to was at the World of Concrete, and it was in a suite. They had rented a suite in the whatever motel, the main motel. They had a suite, and that's the first meeting. That's the first time I got involved with ASCC. They didn't have a big. It was just a small organization, And I got involved years and years ago, and I've been a member a long time, and
It's the early '90s, just like us.
yeah, I just it was ASCC is really a great organization if you want to better yourself in what the trade if you want to be a concrete guy, you need to be involved in ASCC. You can
And your opinion matters.
yeah we're gonna listen to
Yeah.
everybody, and people say it's for the big. No, it's not. I mean, I'm for the little guy. The little guy are the people that we need to educate. They're the ones that really don't understand F numbers. They don't look at contracts. They get themselves into a lot of trouble not knowing that. You know,
Even on residential, I mean, even if you just want to break it down to the simplicity of them doing residential
yeah,
driveways and slab and everything like that, where they don't have contracts and they don't have all this information they need to know, and these contractors are just relying on them to just come in and
yeah,
pour concrete. Those guys mean the world. There's that's a huge part of everything we do, and all of that makes
yeah,
us look bad. It doesn't matter if it's the concrete guy or the stain guy that doesn't know what he's doing. If they don't know what they're doing, they make our industry look bad, and then people think that everybody's like that. And that's a battle I fight all the time to try to prove to people, no, 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 no. You just didn't know what you were hiring. You didn't know what you're paying for. There's a whole another way to look at all of this, and there's a bigger picture
yeah.
to it, and there's a lot to be said
You're
about that.
exactly right. And I mean, these little guys could get. I mean, these big guys will eat them up. You know what I'm saying? They
Mhm.
won't pay them,
Yeah.
and it might have been something that it was not even their fault. But
Well, even with the stuff that you guys do, like the one thing that you don't have to worry about is your clients going on social media and bad mouthing you. You're in a big giant commercial world. That's not how they think. But when you're doing a driveway or a
oh yeah,
patio or a pool deck, those guys can destroy you as homeowners if you don't do the right thing or you don't, talk to them enough or that's why like we talked about customer expectation is so important because those are the people that are going to ruin your
Mhm.
career or ruin your company or anything like that and just destroy you because they can't.
well, it's like stamped concrete. I think stamped concrete is beautiful, but it's a maintenance deal too. And I tell people if you're not going to take care of it, if you're not going to clean it, if you're not going to restain it, if you're not going to do the things you're supposed to do, it's going to look bad in several years. But it is not. It's not. It's going to look beautiful when you do it, but just the ultraviolet rays. A lot of things can affect that in a lot of different ways, and then they want to say, "Well, this guy screwed it." He didn't screw it up. You didn't take care of it. You know.
No, actually, I had a distributor I was talking to that tells their contractors to resale every 4 to 5 years, 4 to 6 years, and I tell my clients 2 to 3 years. You have no idea what happens to sealer if it sits for 5 to 6 years unattended. It is completely different in 2 to 3 years. It's not the same
No.
conversation at all. You guys talk about concrete all the time. I talk about the surface, the coatings, the things that are bonding to it, the things that are happening with those. You have no idea what will happen to a sealer 5 years from now if you don't do something to it. It is easier to maintain every 2 years than it is every four. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're losing all the sealer and that it really needs much. But if you don't break down that sealer every year, like I tell people to use solvents every year just to break it down and re-emulsify it and just reinvigorate it every year, and it will last longer just because of that. Doesn't mean you need more sealer. It's the biggest misconception. Don't over seal
Yeah.
either. You don't need to. I've had guys call me that homeowners that seal every single year, sometimes twice a year. I had a guy that put 20 coats of sealer on his concrete in 10 years. I'm like, dude, what the?
It's a wonder.
No. Like, you don't ever need to seal again. You just need to use solvent and break it down and break it down and break it down. And it's going to take years for you to break that down. But you don't ever need to use sealer again. But you do need to use solvents every single year to re-emulsify that, to soften it back up, to bring it back to the day you put it down. And if you don't do that, it will become hard, brittle, and it will get to a point where you can't break it
It
down
gets
anymore.
it gets real
I've seen
white.
it.
You put so much seal on it, it just turns white.
It starts to
Yeah,
bubble from the heat. When you get that much on it, the solvent will still will. There's it's the same thing that it's one of the reasons why I take people on those art tours every year at ASCC. This is what we're talking about. I'm showing you this from a painting. You're looking at this painting and you're going, look, there's these things that are popping up. There's these cracks on here. There's all these things that are happening. This is outgassing. There's so many things that happen to a painting that are no different than what happens to our floors if you don't
yeah.
do your job right. And it's the same thing with paintings too. Was this person trained by a master? Did he listen to his master? Did he decide that, I'm better than my master and I'm going to do it my way instead and fail? Or did that master not really know what they're doing? It's the same thing we see in pouring concrete too. Who did you learn from? Like you were saying, you learned from someone that wanted to do it the right way all the time and pushed to the limit to teach you got to take it super serious. If I would have learned from a guy that barely did concrete well at all, I may have learned the half-ass way to do it all the time, and no one knows any different. And that's the way I thought concrete was always poured. All of that stuff matters with everything we do in this industry.
I did a job years and years ago for Liberty University, and it was acid stained, and we did a lot of different design. It was absolutely beautiful, and I gave them a sheet of how to take care of that floor, how to what chemicals to use, what solvents to use, and they went completely away, used completely different stuff, and called me back in a couple of years. I said, "What have you been cleaning this for? What have you been doing?" Well, everything was wrong. I said, "Why didn't you do what I told you to do?"
Yeah.
You know, you know. But Rick, like you said, sometimes it's about the money. Well, we found something cheaper. Well, it's cheaper's not always the
Yep.
best. You know,
Never.
so it's all good, but like you said, it's all a team. And you talk about ASCC, I talk about ACI. How Matt, you can adhere to this, but they have really gotten more contractor friendly with people, and together we need each other. So as a team, we're building a heck of a team there with their knowledge of deflections and this and that and other, and our knowledge of boots in the concrete every day. What a team! So I tell people all the time, I get on these jobs with engineers and architects that don't really know a lot, but if I get involved in a project that the engineer architect is actively involved in ACI, I never have a problem. Never have a problem. Never.
Sure. Sure.
You know.
Makes sense.
So uh,
Sure.
I mean,
Which shows that they want to learn too, and which that's a good architect and a good engineer. But you're gonna have good finishers, you're gonna have bad finishers. You're gonna have good architects and
Well,
engineers. You're gonna have bad ones.
it's funny you say that too, because, and I've talked about this throughout the years of my membership at ASCC as to why we don't have more architects and engineers involved with ASCC. You have them with ACI. Why are they not jumping and seeing both sides of this conversation and involved in both sides of
I
it
don't
more?
think
Because concrete's complicated. They don't want to figure it
they
out.
don't want to be involved because they might. What I know? How do you say? How do I say this? So I'm not. I don't have a college degree. Do you think that guy with a college degree? He's. Some of these guys don't want to hear it from a guy that they think they're smarter than.
See, I do the exact opposite. I'm here at ASCC talking to you guys going, I'm this highly educated guy and I don't want to talk that way because it's not helping. It's the exact
Yeah.
opposite for me. Like I don't think about it that way. I wouldn't be here if that
Yeah, and
mattered to me. It's
I
about
don't think about it anymore, Rick. I mean, I am what I am, and I know that I have the experience and the knowledge to give these people what they want. So I don't care what they talk. When I start quoting ACI, or ASCC, or whatever, then they don't know what to say. I mean,
Well, and even to your same point too, I can't tell you how many jobs I've been on where, when I first started my company, the number one thing my business advisor showed me was to make sure that I have MFA after my name on everything, on my business cards, on everything I do. And then I can't tell you how many people were like, "What's MFA stand for?" And when I tell them, they're like, they're shocked because they're highly educated. They went
Yeah.
to school, doctors, lawyers. I mean, I have a very high end clientele, obviously, and so every one of them gets them completely catch off guard. They're not expecting a master
Yeah.
on a floor, and it really does help, and it changes their mentality. And I do see it all the time. I don't get treated like a contractor. I get treated like another intelligent person. I had a job where the homeowner was a brain surgeon, and when he figured out what that MFA stood for, it changed. He was like literally going, "So you're not just another worker showing up. You're not just another contractor showing up. You're actually educated." And I can't believe that
Yeah.
that matters. It's shocking that that mattered,
So
but it changed his whole attitude on how to talk to me because I had that MFA on my
Yeah.
on my
so
business
what
card,
does MFA stand for, Rick?
Master of Fine Art.
Yeah. Well,
So on the contrary, Steve Lloyd has FACI after his name,
well,
which
but Matt, back
do
in
you,
the day, I used to
Same.
sign my name. I used to put DC, but after my name, I would put DC, and I would always put that initial. And people would ask me what that means, and I said, "Doctor of Concrete." You know. So, but the FACI is you know I do use that a lot now. If especially if I'm uh, responding to an engineer or architect, because they'll know that, hey, this guy, I mean, he's a fellow of ACI. You know, he's got to know a little something. He's got to be know a little something. But I've had to use different things like that. But before the FACI, I used to use DC. Right behind my name.
Interesting.
you might
Yeah.
call yourself uneducated, as am I. I didn't go to college either, but having FACI on the end of your name has got to definitely hold some weight. And you have put your time in and gone to a lot of years of concrete college for that to have that in your title for sure.
Not just that, but the education you have brought to everybody, the persistence you have had as long as I've known you to make sure that everybody knows that we can do this
Yeah,
better. There's not a lot of people out there
yeah.
like you, my
But
friend.
that's the thing, Rick. It's we've got to do this. We've got to make everybody aware of that we can do a great job. And how do we do a great job? We got to pass this. I've abused concrete. Uh, I've abused it when I started. I mean, I poured it like water. I'd put 3 or 4 bags of calcium. I mean, I did everything wrong. I've abused it, but it is a right way to do it, and it's so uh, pleasing to me that when we do a job and you get a call back. I mean, we just did a job the other day, and an architect called me and he said, "Steve, this floor is absolutely gorgeous." I mean, that makes you feel good. You know what I'm saying? So, but
It does.
everybody can be that. That's what we got to teach: is take pride in what you do. You know?
Well, and to your same point too, I mean, that's a very good point because how was I going to say it? It's just we take our job so serious. The bottom line to it is we take our jobs so incredibly serious, and I take what I do. Oh, what I was going to say is I was just came back from Savannah, Georgia, where I went to art school, where I got my MFA. For years, I have always assumed that the other colleagues of mine, and I know a couple of them think this way, but a lot of my colleagues think of what I do with concrete as remedial art, not a level of a
Yeah.
master. But they don't understand, to your set you said before with some of your clients, then come on to a job with me. Let me show you how hard this is. You have no idea. You're doing this little painting, you got this little tiny painting behind, you're doing this little thing right here, and it's taking you a week to do this. I'm on, 1,000 square feet and I'm pulling it off in a couple of days. You have no idea what it takes to do this and what to learn the materials and methods. It's a whole different industry. And I was very happy when I went there this time that my teachers, I ran into two of my teachers, ran into a couple of people, and one of my colleagues that I went to school with, and not a single one of them downplayed what I did. It was the exact opposite. They were blown away by what I've done in a different industry and walked into an industry that knows nothing about art and found ways to educate them and show them that there's this whole other universe that you can do with this material. It's amazing what you can do with it on every level, from vertical to horizontal. There's no limit. And so they were completely the opposite. It would caught me off guard. I really expected it to be more of like, I want to learn what you're doing with your paintings, not I don't care about your concrete. And it was the exact opposite. Everybody wanted to know how everything was going on with concrete for me, and it was kind of shocking.
And but that's good. I mean, but they are real artists, though, Rick. I mean, they really are. I mean, they care about something on a canvas. They care about something on concrete. Artwork is artwork. In what you do, the details, you've got only one chance too. Once you engrave the concrete, you can't go back and patch it up and make it look right. I mean, you got.
Well, even with the stains, a lot of my stains, you have no idea the layers it takes for me to lay. And that's what I was explaining to them. I was showing them that kind of stuff, and they didn't know that. They were just thinking I could just paint it. No, this is not a painting. This is a whole different universe with the dyes and the acid stains. It's not as simple as you think. It's a completely different mentality. It took me years, like you were saying before, it took me years to do this kind of stuff. And I'm right there with you of like, when we first started doing this stuff, there was no YouTube. There was no social media. There was nobody to reach out to help and find out ways to do this better. We were doing this on our own. We were making our own mistakes. What we know today is because of our own mistakes, not because someone educated us. That's the bottom line.
We learned from those mistakes.
Absolutely.
Sure did. Many times over. And lost a ton of money learning from those mistakes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Steve.
Well, cool. Do you have any more questions there, Matt?
I got one more for you, and then we'll let you go. What can we do better as an industry from Steve Lloyd's perspective?
Educate. We need to educate. We need to actually, what we need to do is we need to get into the designers and have them design the right concrete.
That's number one.
I mean, we do. I mean, we really do have to do that. I mean, look at some of these. Some of these guys think that 6,000 PSI is absolutely great. And it's absolutely horrible. The shrinkage, cement kills us. It's not, we want a 4,000 PSI concrete. That's what we want. I mean, I don't like compressive strength. I like flexural strength. So if I can get 600, because I think that slab is in a flex mode. So if I can do flexural strength and if I get a 3725 compressive strength and a 610 flexural, I'm the happiest man in the world. You're going to have the best floor you've ever had.
I agree.
I mean, I think we've got to educate. We've got to educate. We've got to educate. We've got to pass on the knowledge.
Can you explain real quick the difference between compressive strength and flexural strength, Steve?
Well, compressive strength is you pour 4-inch or 8-inch cylinder and you put it in compression and break it. Flexural strength, you pour a beam, 4x8 beam, and you actually check your flex load on it. I guess. I mean, that's the way I'm not sure. I mean, if I'm saying the right things.
Basically, the rigidity of how the beam flexes.
Right. The flexural strength.
You want ductile concrete that will actually be able to bend and not break.
Yeah. I mean, and that's what
everybody. So the 6,000 will break too easy. What you guys are saying?
It's too brittle.
So
it's too brittle. You get, the best way I can explain it is like, if you drop a marble on the ground, it's going to shatter. Right? On the right type of surface, it'll shatter. Or like a ring, like a tungsten carbide ring. It's very, very strong metal. However, it'll shatter if you drop it at the right angle, right? Versus like an aluminum, it'll just bend. It's got flexural strength to it. So, that's what you want your concrete. That's what you want your slabs to do. You want them to bend and flex with the subgrade, not just break in half when a forklift drives over it.
So we talked the same thing about our coatings too that are going on top of that. and ones that are more brittle than the others for those reasons, and why you use each one and
Yep.
when, just for the final, for the abuse that it's going to
Exactly. Same kind of deal. Just with concrete slabs, it's a big deal, and it's hard to find people to do flexural strength. It's a big problem in our industry.
It really is. I mean, it's a way to do it right. But yeah, I mean, and you got to figure out what the purpose of the floor is.
Mm-hmm.
What is the purpose of the floor? Am I getting fork truck traffic on this thing 24/7?
Or you get 500 truckloads of freezer material.
Yeah, or am I getting students walking on the floor? I mean, what's the purpose of the floor? Every floor has its purpose, and people design. They don't take time to. What is the purpose of this floor? What is the purpose of this floor? They just throw it all in there and they cut and paste. But educate, and pass on knowledge. I mean, that's the key to. And I think what we got to do now, we got to figure out this 1L cement.
We're working on it.
Well, PC,
it's a never-ending problem.
Well, they told us in New Orleans at ACI. I listened to a guy talk about the 1L, and he said as soon as we get, and I told them this too at ASCC in the finishers meeting, that as soon as we figure out 15%, they're going to 25.
And then as soon as we figure out 25, they're going to go to 1T.
1T.
And then,
I can only
and then it's going to change again.
Yeah.
But that's the best part about our job, Steve, is that as soon as we think we got it somewhat figured out, it'll change.
Well, but the thing of it is, Matt, is okay, put it in your walls, put it in your footers, put it in this, put it in that. Leave these floors alone.
Leave my floors alone.
Leave my floors alone. You can do what you want to that wall. I don't really care.
That's a good point. That's a very good point, actually. Yeah,
we need to title this "Leave My Floors Alone."
Leave my floors alone.
Leave them alone.
I can show you some great floors. We can get on an airplane and fly all over this country, and I can show you 20-year-old floors that are holding up great today with no chemicals. I mean, and I hate to go back to the chemical thing, but like I said, I mean, you got concrete on drugs, man.
The voice of the concrete.
You've got a world that is growing so fast that we've got to find ways to make changes. It's going to happen no matter how, this isn't the days of the Coliseum when there was almost nobody pouring concrete. This is the days of there's so much concrete being poured that they've got to find ways to slow down the manufacturing of the materials too, because we're going to run out eventually, some way, somehow. There's a chance of that. So they've got to find ways to manipulate this to help us or to help the world, whether it's good or bad.
Exactly.
On that note.
Which isn't good, but, yeah.
Well, Steve, thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome. I'm going back to the farm now.
Yep, and get back to work. You got cows to feed.
Well, I had a great time talking to you, Steve.
Man, it's great. It's always good, man. It's always good. And Matt, tell your daddy I said hey.
I will. He was asking about you.
Y'all take it easy, and we'll see you next time. And I really appreciate everything, guys.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you very much. Have a great day, everyone. We want to thank ASCC for sponsoring the show. Go to ascconline.org and check out all the great benefits they have to offer. Follow us on all social media, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button